Mr Chair.
Stuart Nash.
Mr Chair, I didn't quite understand the last speaker's speech. He was supporting our SOP and then challenged our logic. Don't quite know where that fitted in, but maybe I missed something along the other line. The other thing I'd like to talk about, Mr Chair, is Mr Brett Hudson. His speech actually epitomised everything that is wrong with this government. And let me give an example, Mr Chair. I talked about the fact that this legislation says this levy may be allocated to paying to meeting our international obligations, whereas it should say must, because the purpose of this bill is, and I'll read it, the objective of the energy blah 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 bill is to allow for the costs of meeting New Zealand's all stockholding treaty obligation under the agreement on the International Energy Programme to be met through a levy on fuel. This is the very reason why this piece of legislation has been brought before the House. And Mr Hudson stands up and has the nerve to say, well, you know, if we raise more money, then we may apply it elsewhere, like to the Sky City, you know, 130 million and this sort of carry on. That is exactly what is wrong with the government, Mr Hudson. What the people of New Zealand want to know with a level of certainty is if they end up paying for this, and I suspect that actually it will be the producer that end up paying for this, but if they pay for it, then it goes directly into an account that meets our international obligations as per the intent of the legislation. That's what they need to know. I am astounded. The other thing, and I agree with the New Zealand First speaker to a sense, we support the bill, but what we don't want to see is this legislation enacted and then a day afterwards the price of fuel goes up by 3 cents a litre and the oil companies say, well, we've just got another levy to pay and therefore that gives us an excuse to raise the price. Well, as we've alluded to, the cost of this on every consumer is about 3 cents over a 60 litre tank of gas. And in fact, I suspect that they won't put up the price because there will be a little bit of controversy. In fact, we'll go hard, we'll work together on this, we'll go really hard, because if they whack up the price of petrol because of this levy, then we'll hold them to account for that. But I do understand what you're talking about, and the reason I say that is that the amount of tax on petrol in New Zealand is substantial. You've got your excise tax, you've got your GST, and you've got this. But and you know, one of the fundamental principles of tax is there shouldn't be a tax upon a tax. It occurs a lot in New Zealand because we do have excise taxes and we do have GST. So the GST is always a tax on a tax when there is an excise tax in place. But one of the things I want to have a look at this is that the New Zealand First member, and the reason why I don't support what he said fundamentally, is that it should be paid by the supplier, i.e. the guy who owns the pump. Well, I've been told by the petrol guys that they make about 4 cents a litre. Well, let's have a look at what the importers have been making on this. From 2005 to 2010, importer margins were around 13 cents a litre. From 2010 to 2015, importer margins were 26 cents a litre. In late December, importer margins were as high as 40 cents a litre. Now, I don't know, and they were as low as 9 cents a litre in that 2005 to 2010 period. Now, I don't know, Mr Chair, if 9 cents a litre is sustainable or 40 cents a litre is sustainable. And what I have tried to do as our energy spokesperson is have a look at all the costs along that supply chain, and I can't for the life of me determine who is being ripped off. I suspect the New Zealand motorist is, there's no doubt about that, because at 40 cents a litre margin, someone is making an inordinate amount of money there, Mr Chair, there's no doubt about that. But I worked in this game. I imported and traded petrochemical derivatives for 8 years. I know how this works, and it really annoys me when petrol companies, as soon as the dollar moves or as soon as the price of crude moves, they go, whoops, our costs have gone up, and they whack the price up. And yet when it comes down, they are incredibly slow. And let's not be generous with these guys, because I tell you what, the price has dropped, but the last time the price of oil, the price of crude, was $50 US a barrel, our exchange rate was about 0.63, and the price of petrol at the pump was about $1.40. So somewhere along that supply chain, someone is making extraordinary profits. And I think as a parliament, we need to take a good hard look at it. And Claire Curran is dead right. The airlines, if Air New Zealand comes out with record profits this time, any MP who comes from the provinces and gets absolutely reamed by Air New Zealand, I think we will challenge them on this, because the profits those guys are making is is obscene. Thank you very much, Mr Chair.